reflection.
Hello, everyone. I'm happy to be with you. It's a glorious day in New Westminster. There's smoke, and yet this sun is pouring into my office, and it's bright and glorious. And it reminds me that we still live in this beautiful world. It's Thanksgiving this weekend, and that's what's on my mind. And the text that I'll be engaging is Paul's letter to the Philippians. It's a text that's often read, and I think it's one of the lectionary passages. He writes to one of his favorite churches, right? He calls them his joy and his crown. And I like to think that Paul is writing to the United Church of Canada when he writes those words. I don't know why I think that, but so maybe he's writing to us his joy and his crown. And there's two friends who are in conflict with each other, and he sends these two friends off to the church to resolve their conflict in the context of community. And then he reminds us that rejoicing is a spiritual practice, that we aren't just happy, but to practice joy is one of the first calls when we encounter the risen one. And to do it with perseverance and an ongoingness and a patience that leads us beyond our immediate kind of affect, immediate kind of situation, and says this is where the line, the peace that surpasses all understanding will guard your hearts. That's where that line that we pass in the passing of peace, that's where it comes from, is this text. So I'd like to share it with you in celebration and in thinking about Thanksgiving, and then I have a little closing poem that I'll offer as our time. So Paul's writing to his beloved United Church of Canada. Therefore, my brothers and sisters, whom I love and long for, my joy and crown, stand firm in the Lord this way, my beloved. I urge Euodia and I urge Syntyche to be of the same mind in the Lord. Yes, and I ask you also, my loyal companion, help these women, for they've struggled beside me in the work of the gospel, together with Clement and the rest of my co-workers whose names are in the book of life. Boy, when your name is in the scripture, you know you've done something. Then he writes, rejoice in the Lord always. Again, I say rejoice. Let your gentleness be known to everyone. The Lord is near. Do not worry about anything, but in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God. Marianne Williamson argues that we don't ask enough. Sometimes we think God hasn't got time for my trouble. He's got bigger fish to fry. She says we don't ask God enough. Let your requests be made known to God, and the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus.
Action was whatever the fight was between there.
Finally, beloved, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is pleasing, whatever is commendable, if there's any excellence, and if there's anything worthy of praise, think about these things. Keep on doing the things that you've learned and received and heard and seen in me, and the God of peace will be with you. Kind of an amazing text when we think about being in this COVID time, when life is not at all what we imagine it to be, and the practice of joy for Thanksgiving. And I'm thinking too of all the gardeners. And I'm reading this prayer from Mary de la Valette. Please pray with me. I do not have to go to sacred places in far-off lands. The ground I stand on is holy. Here in this little garden I tend, my pilgrimage ends. The wild honeybees, the hummingbird moths, the flickering fireflies at dusk are a microcosm of the universe. Each seed that grows, each spade of soil is full of miracles. And I toil and sweat and watch and wonder and am full of love. Living in place, in this place for truth and beauty. Living in place, in this place for truth and beauty, dwell here. Happy Thanksgiving, my friends. May God be with you as you lean into the coming days of grace and Thanksgiving.
Thank you, Blair. So for our time today, we have asked Cheryl Bear to be with us. Cheryl is the new community minister at First United Church in Vancouver. And John Snow is our Indigenous Minister lead in the region. So I've asked John to start us off with just a few words, and then Cheryl is going to speak to us, and we'll have an opportunity to engage some questions. And then at the end, I'll make a few announcements or updates from the region's perspective. So thank you, John. Over to you. You may need to tilt your webcam down a little bit. We just see your eyes. There we go. That's better. Thank you.
Always have to get to know all this new technology. So thank you. So what I would like to do is help us introduce our thinking, our discussion, our space in this time. So as we reflect, as we consider how we will move forward in this space, I have a few readings that I would like to share with you. To me, a lot of the mandate, a lot of the outlook that the church is searching for, the United Church, is one that comes from some very foundational documents. So with that, I'm going to share one portion of a document that I think will be instructive and offer guidance for us in introducing this time this afternoon. And I also haven't met Cheryl, but I thank her for her time and her space and honor her wisdom. I wanted to read from United Nations Declaration, Article 22. So if we can contemplate these thoughts as we move forward as United Church. Article 22, United Nations on the Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, Article 22. Particular attention shall be paid to the rights and special needs of Indigenous elders, women, youth, children, and persons with disabilities in the implementation of this declaration. States shall take measures in conjunction with Indigenous peoples to ensure that Indigenous women and children enjoy the full protection and guarantees against all forms of violence and discrimination. As we move forward in this space, I would like to offer a reflection as well on how we heal. And one of the most powerful healings we used to have, and it's being rejuvenated now, is the Morley Ecumenical Conference and the Sacred Fire. So I want to have a short reading here, and as I read this excerpt and poem, I'd like you to think about the space as we enter into the discussion of Indigenous women. Accompanying the lighting of the sacred fire, a pipe ceremony was always observed by our pipe holders and ceremonial leaders. Prayers were offered for Mother Earth and all her children, the whole of creation. Prayers were offered for the seasons so that they would continue to bring renewal and beauty to the land. One of the elders would explain the meaning of the sacred fire that was so central to our gathering, telling those present to revere the fire as one would an altar. Garbage is not to be thrown on the sacred fire, but sweetgrass, sage, tobacco, and other offerings are to be placed on it, offered with prayers. The smoke of the sacred fire will carry prayers to the great mystery, our Creator. The fire would burn day and night throughout the conference, with young people responsible for keeping the fire going. Often people would gather around the sacred fire for prayers, meditations, telling stories, sharing experiences, and encouraging one another in the journey of life. Many of us felt the presence of God, the Creator, and were touched. We felt a deeper understanding of our faith as we sat around the fire. My father was inspired by the teachings around the sacred fire, and so he wrote a poem, which I will end with, entitled The Sacred Fire. Along the sacred fire we walked and talked with our great Creator. By the sacred fire we heard living legends of long ago. Beside the sacred fire we shared our stories and our dreams. Around the sacred fire we stood tall and proud as one people. From the sacred fire we felt the warmth and healing energy. In the sacred fire we saw new hope for the ages to come. The sacred fire will always burn within us as we journey on. The sacred fire will always light our path as we blaze new trails. With the sacred fire, we will journey on to that final camp, a most beautiful place. For those of you who were wondering, this is from the readings of my father's book, These Mountains Are Sacred Places. So I open up this space humbly and in support of our topic today, which are the sisters in spirit. Thank you.
Thank you, John. And now we'll open up the mic for Cheryl.
I feel like I need a moment just to even let John's words sort of rest. So I'm just gonna take a few seconds. Ceremony is is so important, I think. I'm just lighting a candle right now because I just feel like this, as I was preparing for this time and this topic, I just felt like this was, for me, it's not just research. It's not just, you know, a talk. It's real. It's very, very personal. So I'm lighting this candle just by way of keeping spirit close and keeping, yeah, just for a little bit of that sacred fire John is talking about. It's not as big nor as much of a ceremony, but it's helpful. These things, these little things help me get through. So Hari, Sunda, Cheryl Bear, Nadleh Whut'en Slee. My name is Cheryl Bear, and I'm from the beautiful village of Nadleh Whut'en First Nation. My village is located. Well, right now I'm in Vancouver, so I'm on the traditional territory of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh people, Coast Salish, and the unceded territory. But my people are about 900 kilometers north and then west of us, and it's only halfway up BC. We used to be called the Carrier Nation, And that's because the French fur traders said that our people were really good at carrying heavy loads for long distances. And I always say, I think they were prophetic, because our people certainly have carried heavy loads for a long time. What we call ourselves Daket, and Daket means the people who travel on the water. Nadleh, my village, it means the place where the salmon return. So that's me. I'm from the Bear clan. Nadleh Whut'en, that's me. My people, we as Indigenous people were identified not by, we rarely introduce ourselves unless we have to, or we're asked to. We don't really, introduce ourselves by what we do. We don't find our identity in our roles or in our jobs, but we introduce ourselves where we're from, because we're identified by land. So this this topic, well, maybe first of all, thank you to Treena and the Townhall for your kind invitation. This is just my first week of work at First United, so I'm just kind of settling in. So, but I appreciate this opportunity to share, especially on such an important topic as the Red Dress Project and the missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. This is so important, so thank you. And thank you also to Elder John Snow. I've heard lots about you, mostly good. Just kidding. All good. And so I look forward to meeting you in person someday. So the there was a project that started the Red Dress, and I've heard it called the Red Dress Campaign, or the Red Dress Project, and there was a public art installation by Jamie Black in 2010. So this is going back 10 years, but it caught on in a beautiful way, and so it still continues to this day. I was in a campus in Washington State, and a college campus, and I was walking around the campus, and I saw all of these red dresses hanging in trees, and it just took my breath away. And anytime this happens, it's a little shocking. And of course, the red on the dress is so eye-catching, and it's supposed to be. It's intended that way. So for me, as an Indigenous woman, it caught my eye for sure, and it was jarring, but also, and anytime I've seen these dresses, it's jarring, but it's also so beautiful, and it helps me. It just makes me feel good that that the women are being remembered. Here at First United, there's a corner. It might have been a corner office at one point, but now it's just a room that everybody gets to use. But in the window, there's 4 windows. And I was so happy to see that there were 4 dresses hanging in 4 of those windows, 4 red dresses. And it just, again, it's always shocking, and it always makes me feel good. We as Indigenous people, we commemorate, and you can do this, you know, like that is sort of like a standing memorial here at First. And in Nadleh, where I'm from, there's a young lady who put a red dress on a tree just when we were turning onto our land. And so it's right there, and she's got a little memorial post up there talking about missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. So you can, and those are kind of like standing all the time memorials. But to have an event, it's interesting, and it's interesting to me how many times I've seen it at college campuses where I'm invited to speak, or at church events where I'm invited to speak. It's been good to have that, to see that, so that it's a bit more of a one-time thing. You have it there and then you take it away. We commemorate our loved ones by placing a red dress on a hanger and putting it in a place of prominence. And when we see those, the dresses, it reminds us of those we have lost. My experience as an Indigenous woman is, of course, you know, we talk about our own experiences, right? And if you ask an Indigenous person, it's a horrible question to ask, but if you ever had to, for some reason, ask this question, do you know a missing or murdered Indigenous woman? Every Indigenous person in Canada would say, no, I don't only know just one. So many of us know far more than one. So when I was 15 years old, I just finished grade 8, and I had gone it was in Prince George. I had gone downtown or across town to a Catholic high school, and I had just bussed in and bussed back. It wasn't on native land, so it's not considered a residential school or even a day school. But there was lots of other Native students from all over the region that were staying on campus in residence. And there was one named Nina Joseph, and she's from up Nakasley way, like north of Nadleh, where I'm from. And so we have relatives in common, but I just knew her as one of my friends that whole school year in grade 8. And then that summer we all said our goodbyes and you know, hugs. And then the next, I think a month later, my dad showed me the newspaper and said, do you know this girl? And I looked at the paper, and here it was Nina Joseph, my friend from PGC, Prince George College. And I read the article, and she had been strangled in a park downtown, and it was her boyfriend. And they used she had a hoodie on, and of course every hoodie has a tie, so like a shoestring thing, and she was strangled with the cord of her own hoodie. And that for years and years, I can tell you, that was, of course, now, you know, I'm in grade 8. Now I'm 52 years old. It wasn't until maybe within the last 5 years or so that I realized, oh my goodness, I don't do that anymore. Because I had a hoodie and I didn't pull the string out and cut it off and take it out. I did that most of my life, but up until about 5 years ago. And it's, to me, kind of a mark of healing, I guess, that I don't do that anymore. But the fact that I even still notice it tells you the kind of trauma that I was experiencing in my life. And when I was 17, I got news that one of my cousins, Kim Casimir, she's just from down the road, a village named Saikas First Nation, used to be called Stony Creek. And she was driving with her little brother, and she was 19 and he was 17. And their car broke down. And so they got out and they started hitchhiking for help. And somebody pulled over. She got in and she scooched over for her brother to get in. And as soon as she was in and kind of starting to move, the car sped away. And that was the last time her brother saw her. She had to be identified by like dental records, and because this guy just did such a number on her. And that same week, one of my uncle, we called him Big Ray, Uncle Ray, and he was this giant of a man. And he just within a few days, we were told that he hit a moose and he died instantly. And so then when I got the news about Kim, it was a really tough week. I just felt like that week, like my soul had walked away from me. And of course, there's lots more earlier stories of loss that I could tell you when I was 4, when I was 5, different close members of our family. But this specifically talking about Kim and then remembering Nina, it really affected me really deeply, just knowing how vulnerable women are, of course, but how much more vulnerable Indigenous women are. Indigenous women are the most vulnerable people group in Canada and in the United States. We have the highest number of missing and murdered Indigenous women, or the highest, in Canada and the United States. We make that up, and it's hard to sort of wrap your mind around that. When I see those statistics, when they say in the States that Indigenous women are more likely to go missing, or they're the ones that make up the majority of missing women on these lists, I'm shocked by that, because we're not a majority in the population. You know, we make up what, 2%? I don't know all the current stats, but it's shocking to me, and it's because we're so much more vulnerable. And it's a bit of it's an ancient tactic of colonization to brutalize and subjugate the women, and it continues today. It's so being and going through these things as a teenager, it just made me feel like like I didn't know what the future would hold, and I thought, well, maybe that's going to be my end. That'll be how I go as well. And it's interesting that people always assume that there's always the question that's asked if you say, oh, you know, and I work on the downtown east side here, and I worked here during the Picton days. I founded a church and worked here from 1996 to 2004. And so Picton that was his whole time. And we would talk about, there was a poster of all these missing women, and some of the girls that I knew who had even been baptized in our church showed up on that poster. And when we talked about these women going missing, people would say, oh, was she a prostitute? And it's just shocking to hear that. Oh, was she a drug addict? But then you would even hear that about, like, my cousin Kim or Nina. They would have those kind of questions for every Indigenous woman that goes missing. And we have to end up sort of defending ourselves and saying, you know what, no, Kim was, you know, she was a mom. Her car broke down. Like, she was doing nothing. And the reason those questions hurt so much when people say, was she drinking? Was she a drug addict? Was she this or that? It hurts so much because it sort of insinuates that she was asking for it. And that's an evil assumption. One of the things that I know is a stereotype, and this is hurtful again. You can read me and see how hurtful it is. That there's a saying going around, or a stereotype going around, that Native girls are easy, Native women are easy. And you know what I mean by that. And I often say, no, broken girls are easy prey. And that's the truth. There are broken girls and broken young ladies, broken women who are easy prey. And that might be part of it. That might be from the history of colonization. I certainly need more healing, but I feel like I've come a long way on my healing journey, but still I need more. But, and so those things, when we lose one of our loved ones, someone goes missing, it's so hard because of all those added questions that are stereotypes, and stereotypes are based, you know, they're so hurtful. So it's it's just heaping grief upon grief. I remember there was some memes going around on Facebook, maybe about 5 or 10 years ago or something, and it says, you know you're Native if, and it was really quite funny because Native people are really funny. Like the humor is just probably one of my favorite, most beautiful things about Native people. We're just always, you heard me kidding about John earlier, saying, I've heard about you, mostly good. You know, we have this, you know, I don't know, this great sense of humor. So then any of that, you know, you're Native if, and some of the things were, you know, you use a blanket for curtains or whatever. It's just, it was just funny kind of in-house humor, and sometimes you do that stuff until you buy some curtains or whatever. So we had some laughs about it. But I remember there was a comment by a friend of mine named Ganarchi from here on the downtown east side. She's from Alert Bay area. And she said, you know you're Native if you go missing and nobody looks for you. And it really gave me pause, of course. And it just brought home again this tragedy that it feels like Indigenous lives are worth less in Canada than other groups, especially the dominant white culture here. And not only does it feel like it, but it's been proven. The Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women's Commission has gone around the country, and they have interviewed victims, families, mothers, fathers, daughters of the missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. And they came back with stories that are so hard to hear, so hard to listen to, just like the TRC all over again. Listening to residential school stories was so hard. Our truths, the things that happened to my mom in the Jack school, the things that happened to our people, those are tough things. Now again, we're listening to the stories and the testimonies of the victims' families in this commission. And some of those stories are tough again. One young girl was found shot in the back, and it was ruled a suicide. Another young lady was found naked in a ditch an hour out of her community, way up north, and they ruled it not suspicious. And it happens, these things, you know, because they're happening all across Canada. When you compile them and you look at the massive list of all of those things, not suspicious or ruled suicide or whatever, you just kind of go, what the hell is going on here? And it comes back very clearly that that Indigenous lives, Indigenous women's lives, clearly are worth less here. So the battle for justice for Indigenous women and girls and men is important, and it's important to every Canadian. And I feel like even my getting to talk to you guys about this, you are hearing these stories, you're hearing my stories, my trauma, and it's decolonizing you a little bit. And I never want anyone to be afraid of that word decolonization, because I think it's so important for Canada to continue to be colonized. I think the fact that most Canadians now, since 2008, not 2007 when the court case was won, but a year later when the apology was given by then Prime Minister, ever since 2008, most Canadians have known about the residential schools. And the reaction that I got from Canadians was, how could this have happened? How come we didn't know? And they're angry about it. And so today that most people know that's because we've been decolonized a little bit. The story, the truth was told, and it changed Canada. And now the curriculum in schools has changed. Some things, of course, remain the same in certain communities, but a lot has changed, and a lot more will change. Marie Sinclair said it took us 7 generations to get to that point in 2007. It's probably going to take us the same to see justice, that many generations. So maybe my great-great-granddaughter will see justice, and we'll see equality, all of that stuff. And I feel like it's the same for this, but these, this is, and learning about this, learning about the red dress or having, placing a red dress, it's a ceremony to remember, and it's an act, it's a step. And like the land acknowledgement to me is an important step, but it is a baby step, maybe even a baby's first step in the journey of reconciliation. And I feel like these acts of learning, of these acts of decolonization, they're all steps in this journey of reconciliation that we're on together, and that our elders, my elders, said they wanted the TRC based on South Africa, truth and reconciliation. And so they were the ones the victims of some of the most horrendous crimes here in Canada. They were asking for reconciliation from the perpetrators of that injustice. That's huge to me. And that's why I talk about these things. That's why I share my story whenever I'm asked, because of their courage, their willingness to talk about these things. And so we can continue to remember girls like Kim and Nina and the friends of mine here who went missing on the Picton farm, my friend Olivia, my friend Serena, that were found there. Oh, Olivia wasn't found there, but she talked to me in 1996 about some friends that picked her up and brought her out to a farm, and they were so good to her and they were so nice to her. And then she walked away one night and we never saw her again. So commemorating those beloved friends, those beloved family is so, so important. So thank you for letting me speak to this important issue. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Let's just take a moment, silent prayer and meditation on what Cheryl has offered us, and then I'll open the floor up for questions. Thank you, Cheryl. That was a very powerful time, and we appreciate you sharing your stories with us. So I wonder if any of you have questions. You can put them in the chat, or you can raise your hand and I will call on you.
Or comments, maybe. It's pretty tough to ask a question about
Fair.
all of that, yeah, but maybe some comments.
I have a few comments that I'll maybe kick off and get us going.
That'd be great. Thank you, John.
You're welcome. So part of the work that I'm doing and have done over my lifetime was, as I said, through the Morley Indian Ecumenical Conference, and a lot of it had to do with healing. And so that was one of the reasons why I read about the sacred fire and the importance of knowing some of the foundational documents that the United Church has been able to participate in, advocate, and we had some discussion about that from Cheryl when she said that Canada had made the apology in 2008. So I think as United Church groups and people and members and clergy and lay people, I think it's important to also know that because of the apology that United Church made in '86 and then subsequent to that, that paved a way for an apology to be made in Parliament. So I think we need to hold that and lift that up, that we, as United Church, we have many things to be reflecting on, lifting up, and to enter our discussions. So were it not for the '86 apology, I don't know if we would have that 2008 apology. So I think we have some profound history in the development of looking at how we work to recognize injustice and looking at lifting up the issues of social justice. So that's one of the reasons why I am United Church ordained minister today, and so was my father. So I wanted to share that as part of our background. The other thing, the reason why I read that poem on the sacred fire is we had many people come from BC especially to the Morley Ecumenical Conference, and I would want to share with you, Cheryl, we had 2 talking sticks that were gifted by the Carrier Nation to my father. So we carry those sticks still today, and they are given in reverence, but in honor of the work that was done. So as we work toward healing, I think it's going to have to be done ecumenically, and we as United Church can't do that alone. We need to reach out to community, and we also need to look at what other denominations can we work with. And I know that in most instances we're able to work with the Anglican and some other denominations. So I would encourage you to, as staff and as clergy and as lay people, to reach out and look at what you can do together with projects and events, because I think there's a lot to be done with ecumenical partners. The final thing I wanted to say is Cheryl is right. These things are traumatic to deal with. I am a residential day school survivor. So one of the blessings that I received is looking at how we can get our own self-healing. And so one of the programs that we have at Sandy Soto, where I went to seminary, the Theological College for Indigenous Ministers, one of the things that we had to do was take some Western-based psychology, some Western-based counseling. And I found that important and good to do, but at the same time, I felt it was incomplete. So I mentioned to Sandy Soto that we also need elders to participate in our healing, elders to talk to. So I'm one of the very few that came through that particular program, and I utilized both the Western healing methodologies and using also traditional healing methodologies. So I wanted to share some of those points with you and Cheryl, that we do have a connection through the talking sticks. We do need to do our own healing. Our reading of Paul in the beginning was very appropriate. Thank you, Blair. Paul really talks about the inner person and how we need to work on our own development, our own healing. It's when we do that work individually or as congregations or as communities of faith that we are able to step forward. And so once that healing and that work has taken place, I think it is unbelievable what we can accomplish. It is unbelievable what United Church is capable of. Thank you.
Thank you, John. John is always reminding me that as the church, we have the opportunity to be leaders in the area of reconciliation, and in particular, he wants Pacific Mountain region to really step up in that area. And so we'll be exploring ways that we can do that under John's leadership. So thank you. So there's a couple of questions in the chat about specifically about Red Dress Day, and wondering, what is appropriate? Is it appropriate for us to hang red dresses, and is there a resource or something that we can share in our communities of faith to educate folks about that movement?
Good question, yes. I have just sent you, Treena, an email or a link, sorry, on email to the National Day of Awareness for Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls. And the day is, the National Day of Awareness is May the 5th. And so if you are able to, with your church group, with whatever organization, perhaps, or many organizations that you're involved with, if you can let them know a month before time, say, hey, you know, this big day is coming up. And then that link that I've given you is to Aboriginal education. It's School District 8, but they do have a few links in there, and they do have some good resources. You can Google some stuff and just Google Red Dress Project resources, and a few things will automatically come up. Information about it or the Red Dress campaign. And I think though I've also seen like a picture frame size version of like red dresses, and so you can get those kind of resources that you could hang up on, you know, in a spot, you know, maybe a nice spot in your church or your organization, and you could leave that there year round, you know, and hopefully, or maybe even put a little, you know, a little piece of paper underneath it, like they do in art shows, and just kind of explaining, you know, what this picture is about, just so that there's a chance for the awareness, for everybody to have this awareness. So thanks for that question. The first question was interesting to me. How do you find strength to persevere when facing long-term and systemic justice? Dang, good question. I actually, to be honest, I have had dark days. I always say, why did St. John of the Cross get off with one dark night of the soul? I'm like, I've had a dark years. And of course, crises of faith, like big time after the TRCs and listening. I had traveled and gone to quite a few of the TRCs just to be a support to the different elders, and it rattled me. So it has been really difficult to just even sort of like remain a good human being, I think, in some ways. Faith for sure has helped me. Faith in Creator, because, and the faith that I have in the stories of my people that predate when settlers came. The stories of my people of the Creator actually helped me more than the Bible, because I had such a crisis of faith because of so many church leaders who had been involved in all of these atrocities. So you know, it was the government and priests and nuns and these church leaders who were doing these things and working to assimilate and eradicate and genocide Native people. So, and those things that were done were so raw and so horrible. So that kind of thing. And then of course, like all the deaths that I've experienced, we don't experience more death because we're so messed up. We experience more death because we're so connected to one another. We are literally, I have literally connected to like about 1,000 cousins and so many different communities surrounding my First Nations community. So that's another thing to talk about. But that's also, it's a source of like tremendous grief, because we you know, lose somebody in the next reserve, they're a cousin and we're connected there. But it's also a source of tremendous strength. Having John Snow here is a source of strength to me, and hearing his words, hearing his encouragement, giving more wisdom. You know, I knew about the 1986 United Church apology, and I was so grateful for that. And it's shocking how many more denominations haven't been able to, or have waited a long time, and even we still haven't received one from Vatican, which is another tough thing. But so I appreciate that. But having Indigenous elders working here with Carmen, and then now working with Bev Brown, when I sit and I talk to them, we have the same story. They have the same story as I do. We can sit and we can talk about this tough stuff, and then we'll also, somebody will say something, and then we'll just start laughing. And we have that humor again, laughter. An elder told me that we grieve in two ways. We cry and we laugh. And I think that that's a lot of healing as well. So yeah, it's a journey. It's been a journey to me. I'm grateful for my elders who who walk alongside of me, and many ancestors on the other side now, many more ancestors the more older I get, that I still lean on their wisdom and their teachings. So that helps me a lot. Turn it back to you, Treena, to do the questions.
Sure. So Tress is just commenting about even in her lifetime, the difference of experience being in school versus that of her children, and the fact that those conversations are much more honest, and how you know, as parents we're challenged not to shy away from those difficult questions, especially with respect to the missing murdered Indigenous women. And then just reminding her kids and herself about the privilege that Indigenous kids don't have, which is, well, Indigenous kids don't have the privilege of not having to know, Cheryl, your words, no, we don't know one, we know many. So that's just a statement of the power of your words. And then Kamiko is reflecting, I'll just read it. I'm struck by Cheryl's comment about the presumption of the question about missing women. Was she a prostitute or drug user? Implied that they were asking for it. Even if some women were prostitutes or drug users, this sense of deserving it is both awful and ugly. Okay, just some reflections. Barbara's asking the question about appropriation. When I think about hanging a red dress outside of our church, I'm thinking about appropriation. I do want to be careful, and I want to be an ally. We don't have any Indigenous members, so I guess the question is, would that be appropriate to hang a red dress in that situation?
Maybe I'll let John speak to this as well, but I think, yes, I think it's appropriate, because it's showing again that step of decolonization. And if you have a Native person coming up and saying, "What's this?" You know, then you've opened yourself up to becoming a friend of a Native person, and you get to walk alongside that person. And to answer the question, you know, if some Native person does, you know, what are you doing here? What's this? And then they'll know what it is, because we all know what this red dress means. But for you guys to be able to articulate and say, you know, this hurts us all. We want to raise awareness. We want things to change. So we're commemorating all the you know, and you go into that will bless their heart. So, but I don't know if John, you want to talk about that, because you know the church is better.
Yes, I agree. I think it's important to go through the reflection of what you want to do and how you want to do it. So if we come back to the discussion that Blair offered, the reflection in the beginning, what are we called to do is what I would say. What is the Spirit calling you to do? And so how do you want to show up? How do you want to make that available within your congregation? So one of the ways that my brother is working here, you know, some of you may know Tony. And so Tony is being invited to a variety of churches where he is speaking about a lot of these issues. And Tony is my brother. He's a student minister, but he also travels with my sisters. So Gloria or Teresa will participate and bring the Indigenous female perspective, which I think is very powerful and important. So what I would say is, that's fine if you would like to do something, and if you have no Indigenous people in your community of faith, I think it's important to invite an Indigenous speaker. So I think someone like Cheryl or Carmen or myself, and there's many other Indigenous ministers that we can connect with, especially in Pacific Mountain region. Those capabilities are there. We can zoom in. Once COVID is lifted, I think it would be a beautiful time to gather together in person as well.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. But also, you know, it's really important that you give those Indigenous speakers a huge honorarium.
I would add that if a community of faith wanted to take an action like that, it would be important for them to discuss it so that people know what it means and why they're doing it, so that if they do get asked that question, that they really can answer it and engage in relationship, and for it not just to be, you know, everybody's hanging a red dress, so we're going to hang a red dress, but for it actually to be a statement and of solidarity and a recognition. So I think it is important that there be a conversation attached with the decision that really helps you understand what you're stating in that action. Much like with the rainbow that Blair has pointed out there in the
So
chat.
one thing I would add, just to follow up on the question and discussion that Barbara asked, is if you, for instance, would discuss with your community of faith, what are we going to do, or what are we called to do? What is the Spirit calling us to do? And then coordinate with one of us that is available. We're available to you as a resource, but also connect it to an event, connect it to the land. And when I say connecting to the land, we have this Highway of Tears that has just been gifted with this totem. And so what are we going to do? What are we called to do as a community of faith? How do we want to show up as a result of that action? Do we want to do a walk? Do we want to do some fundraising? Do we want to have counseling made available to the women that are challenged in that area? Or do we simply want to finance a bus so they can travel safe? You know, these are the things that we could do when we're in discussion with one another.
I was also gonna add, these kind of days like May 5th, it's also like a good way to reach out to a local First Nations community. If you don't have a relationship with the First Nations community nearest your church, you could you know, call their administration office and just say, do you have can you give us the name of an elder who can come and share at our church and maybe talk about the red dress or the residential schools or different things, and then say we want to offer an honorarium and we'll offer, you know, travel and a gift, and that's all appropriate, good protocol, and that way and then say the elder and their family. So then the elder isn't just kind of popping in all by themselves, because that's massively intimidating. Some of our elders are really, really great speakers. One of my aunties is probably one of the most cherished elders in my community, but she doesn't like to talk in public. She will not get up and share. But there's others who are good at it. So those ones I'm sure you'd find in an Indigenous community, you will find more people who are very eloquent and very able to share these stories. So it might be a good way to reach out and to start building that relationship. And, you know, not, to me, the goal is never to, you know, fill seats. You know, that's never the goal, is to put bums in seats, because for Indigenous people, we have maybe even been over evangelized. For sure we need, you know, to have faith. We need our faith built up, but also we need people to do their homework, take that free university course, you know, the Indigenous Studies course, learn on your own, learn about the local community, and then walk alongside for a long time before we're trying to get them into our church. So that's my little, that was for free. The whole thing was for free.
Thank you, Cheryl.
Yeah.
So we're nearing the end of our time. Does anybody have any other, I think you're reading the comments of gratitude in the chat there, Cheryl, so I won't read those out, but are there any last minute questions or comments?
John here, I just have some last minute reflections I want to share as well. So
Okay.
we just lost one of the elders who was quite powerful leader in the United States and Canada. He was on the board at Vancouver School of Theology. It was Dr. Reverend Cecil Corbett, Nez Perce Indian from Idaho. And so it's very sad that we lost him. But one of the things that he told me and Tony and Billy, we were lucky to interview him the last time he was in Canada. And one of the things he said was, we need to be led by some of the teachings of the elders. And Cheryl talked about this as well. So he said the closest teachings to elders that he shared with us is really gifted and encapsulated in Romans 10 through 12. We have an ability to take a look at how an elder would speak and how an elder would counsel our people in our community. So as we reflect on scriptures, I think Romans 10 through 12 offers some insight. The other insight that I'll offer to our group is that we had this vision session with Chinook Winds, the last region that I was at. And so one of the things we talked about was 1 Corinthians 12. What are our gifts? And if we hold those two scriptures, if we hold those two thoughts, I think much will be revealed to us. 1 Corinthians 12, what are your gifts? What are your gifts individually? What are your gifts as a congregation? What are your gifts in your community of faith? And what is it calling you to do? Thank you.
Thank you, John. I cannot express my appreciation and gratitude to both John and Cheryl for their time today and their willingness to be with us and to open up their hearts and souls so that we may learn and to re-engage that trauma so that we may learn. And that's a tremendous gift to us, and I can't thank you enough for it. So, but thank you. I think we've come to the end of our time. I have just a couple of reminders that I just wanted to share with folks, and then we'll ask Blair to close our time in prayer. It feels a little jarring to transition to business things, so I apologize for that, and hope you'll forgive me. But I did just want to remind people about the upcoming regional meeting that's happening and encourage you to please register for that. If you're planning to attend, you can, if you're planning to attend as a non-voting member, we still need you to register. So if you could do that, that would be fabulous. We have another town hall later this week that is for the financial geeks who want to know about the region's finances in an effort to be transparent. We're offering just an information session around our audited financial statements and so on. So if you have interest in that, also please register so that we can send you the pre-materials. We have proposals open, so if you have proposals to bring before the region, the deadline for that is October 15th. It is not a general council year, and nor is next year, so if the proposal is intended for general council, you could just hold off on that to our next meeting because our meeting schedule is a little tight. So these would just be proposals for the region that would be ideal. And any general council proposals can come to us in 2021 or 2022. And yeah, don't miss Ron Heifetz. He's going to be fabulous. So it's a real opportunity for us as a region to have somebody of his caliber spend this kind of time with us. So I'm very, very excited about that. You will be hearing from the National Church this week, probably, maybe next week, with a call for people who have been hanging on to assessments to please forward them along. If if that's not possible, then it can still be deferred. But just recognition that National's kind of trying to return things to normal a little bit. And yeah, they're also auditing for compliance around wage subsidies, but that is just, it's just routine. So it is possible that a community of faith may get contacted to be audited around the claiming of the benefits from COVID, like the 75% wage subsidy and the 10% wage subsidy. Don't panic if that happens. It's just routine, and National will assist you. They're working with ADP to figure out how we're going to respond to that. And then the celebration of ministry service is on the 16th of October at 1 o'clock. That will be live streamed, and it will be a live service. So we're encouraging people to watch that and participate in the gift of ordaining and commissioning 4 beautiful people, one of whom is Murray Pruden, who held John's role previously, but now is the National Executive Minister for Indigenous Ministries. So that's quite a privilege to be hosting his ordination. So we're excited about that. And then we did put the question out there whether or not folks would appreciate having a Sunday worship available from the region. So we have heard that, and we will be presenting a Sunday morning worship that you can attend with your congregations. And Nora Saunders will be preaching at that, and moderator Richard Butt will be preaching at the celebration of ministry. So I think those are the majority of my announcements. Does anybody have any particular questions? Okay, well, thank you so much. As always, you can reach out to me if you have any questions or concerns. And I'm just going to invite Blair to close our time together.
Thank you, Treena. Thank you, Cheryl, so much. It's such a, sometimes thanks is such an insipid word. It's just so not enough. And it's what we have. I'm so grateful. Thank you. And John, I'm delighted that you're amongst us. I've written that in the comments. I can't wait to see you again and look forward to working with you. Margaret Wheatley's little book called Perseverance fell off the shelf as we were engaged in this conversation, and she begins her book, Perseverance, there it is. She begins with a prayer from the Hopi Nation from Arizona. You will have heard this before, I'm sure, but I think it's absolutely timely. So here's the prayer from the elders of the Hopi Nation. To my fellow swimmers, here is a river flowing now very fast. It's so great and swift that there are those who will be afraid, who will try to hold on to the shore. They're being torn apart and will suffer greatly. Know that the river has its destination. The elders say we must let go of the shore, push off into the middle of the river, and keep our heads above water. And I say, see who is there with you and celebrate. At this time in history, we are to take nothing personally, least of all ourselves, for the moment we do, our spiritual growth and journey come to a halt. The time of the lone wolf is gone, is over. Gather yourselves. Banish the word struggle from your attitude and vocabulary. All that we do now must be done in a sacred manner and in celebration. For we are the ones we've been waiting for. Amen. Happy Thanksgiving, my friends.
Thank you. if anybody is interested in hearing more about Cheryl, she's got a couple of books and some CDs, and so you can search those up and become more acquainted with Cheryl. She had beautiful music CDs that I really encourage you to listen to if you get the chance. So thanks, Cheryl. Well, have a good day, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Okay, Jennifer, maybe I'll just call you on that number and then we can close the meeting off.
Take care, people.
Thanks. Bye.